It has been nearly a month since the version 9 UE5 update to Squad. With this update, we were told to expect a better performance, to expect a better looking engine, and to expect a easier system for OWI to be able to fix a lot of the spaghetti code that has been plaguing Squad for years. And while the whole journey to UE5 has been an adventure in its own, I have multiple videos on that topic, which I will leave in the description. It really has not been smooth sailing, and I really hate having to be so negative all the time when I talk about Squad in these videos. Squad is an amazing game with so much potential and so much replayability. However, it is also one of the buggiest full release games I have ever played. Any longtime or even newer Squad player will pretty frequently notice just little things off everywhere you go. The vast majority of it isn't game breaking or is not even immersive breaking to an extent. It's just something that we live with as the Squad community and have for years, especially with the spaghetti code, which is one of the things that we were all really hoping that UE5 would fix, or at least is a building block to fix. Now, I understand it's only been a month since UE5 has been released, and I don't expect everything that was previously wrong with the game to be fixed. One thing I was hoping for, however, was that there wouldn't be a bunch of new things introduced in this new build of UE5 that was introduced on the update and a month later, after several hotfixes, has still not been fixed. There was a lot of bugs, a lot of frequent bugs in the UE5 playtest, and every subsequent playtest, some would get patched out, but others would be quite reoccurring, and everyone really hoped that OWI would be able to iron all of those out before UE5 hit its actual release. Now, to their credit, OWI did fix a lot of these problems, but some of the most glaring ones are still in, and they are insanely bad a month later. So let's get into it. The first major one, which really wasn't that much of a problem on the playtest, which has been plaguing my experience of this game the last month, is the Gunsmoke. One of the massive welcoming changes that was in the V9 update was the reduction of some of the ICO era recoil to make gunplay feel better. And my initial thoughts on the new gunplay are that it does feel way better and is a step in the right direction, however it still could be improved upon. But that isn't the main issue at stake here. The main issue is the Gunsmoke. When you are in a gunfight now in this version of Squad, sometimes it is unbearable how you cannot see your target after you've fired your first burst. In particular in full auto. If I'm in a gunfight with somebody and after the first couple of shots I literally cannot see them on the screen because there is so much smoke, it feels like I'm on a Napoleonic battlefield, that is a major issue, and it is hampering my experience for gunplay so much in this game right now. So many close quarter fights are even more confusing and feel even more impactful than the ICO changes because I just can't see the guy I'm shooting at mid gunfight. There's been so many times I've lost gunfights purely because after the first burst out of my weapon, I lose the person and they just tap me. Now the solution to this you could just say is, well, why don't you just play single fire more? Which yes, switching your weapon to single fire does tend to not produce as much smoke as you're not firing as many bullets. It's still incredibly inconvenient, and in a split-second decision will probably lose you the gunfight anyway. As much as OWI wouldn't like to admit it, the close quarters gunplay of Squad is a crucial aspect of the game. We can talk about all of the different tactics and all of the different things that need to come together for a team to be successful in Squad, but at the end of the day, the framework of the gunplay is one of the most important foundations of this game, and post-ICO it has been thoroughly lacking for years now. Having another problem where you cannot enjoy the gunplay because you literally cannot see what you're shooting at is just another problem that doesn't make me want to play Squad. I was just reminded the other day that the recoil bug is still in the game that is tied to your FPS. If you have more FPS while playing Squad, you'll tend to get slightly more recoil than somebody who is playing on a lower frame rate. This was a really bad issue with the swaying with the post-ICO Squad, where the swaying was also tied to lower FPS, getting less swaying, while the higher FPS was getting drastically more swaying. There also is and has been a recoil bug for years at this point in Squad that is tied to your FPS. It isn't insanely drastic, which is why it hasn't gotten a ton of attention, but if you look at comparisons between high and low FPSs, you will see that you do get more recoil on higher FPSs than you will on low FPS. Now, I didn't think this was that drastic of an issue. I mean, how could it be? We would be noticing it like crazy if it was, until I went on the training range and tried to replicate it myself, and I replicated it easily. It may not be insane, the difference, but it is a very noticeable difference how you have less recoil at lower FPSs than when you are at higher FPSs. Just look at the clip here and see for yourself. And I'm not even running squad at that high of an FPS. I was getting 130 with the better FPS versus 30 in the lower, and you can still see it is a very noticeable difference. Now you can see in particular in the M249 clip about how the fire rate on the higher FPS seems to be a lot higher than the one on the lower FPS, despite starting at the same time. The mag in the higher FPS finishes faster, so that's likely something to do with fire rate being limited at lower FPSs, which results in low recoil. But that's just my amateur assessment of the situation. Now, originally I thought that was all of the major glaring gunplay related issues with the V9 update, but as I was about to export this video, it turns out there is another one, an even worse one. This one involves using Freelook to negate visible recoil. All you have to do for this one is, while you are firing your weapon, hit Alt to use Freelook, and all of a sudden, all of your visual recoil is completely negated. And this one, out of all of them, is the most game-breaking. While yes, if you are using Freelook, you aren't going to be able to properly aim down your scope, the recoil difference here is insane. It goes from shooting a massive arc up above your head to a absolute laser beam. In close quarter situations, this is going to be insanely broken. Think of how hard it is to use ARs and HMGs close range just because of the amount of recoil post ICO. Using this, you can fire a laser directly in front of your player model, even if you're not aiming directly at them. The technique is a bit finicky to get down, but once you do, you could use this thing to crazy good effect, which is obviously not intended. As much as I want to do away with ICO in squad, this is definitely a step too far, and I cannot believe that it's taken this long for people to discover this bug, given how crazy of an advantage you can have if you use it in the right scenarios. This is just another bug in an ever-growing list of problems with squad's gunplay that is nowhere near where it should be for the kind of game that squad is. Now you might say, well, the gunplay isn't in a great place right now, but at least there are other aspects of squad which are still amazing and cinematic. And while that is true, when the gunplay is massively affected by a bug, you would hope another big part of the time you spend playing squad wasn't also insanely, not necessarily buggy, but just horrible experience-wise right now, and that would be driving. I mentioned this multiple times on my videos talking about the Unreal 5 playtest, how driving just did not feel good. They fixed some certain aspects of it for certain vehicles, for certain vehicle types. You can get out of a trench mostly now in a tracked vehicle. Some wheeled vehicles don't drift nearly as much as they used to, but then at the same time, tracked vehicles are insanely slow and even more useless on big maps than they already were. And wheeled vehicles, some of them drift even more than they used to. And most of them, you cannot stop when you start driving. They seem to have entirely taken out the ability to use the parking brake effectively, which was like one of the main tools to be able to drive good in squad. The majority of games you play in squad, you will start by driving somewhere in a vehicle, most of them being wheeled vehicles. And if the majority of wheeled vehicles all feel horrible to drive, that is now my driving experience part of the match that is really bad right now, and my gunplay part of the match, which feels really bad right now. I guess I can at least still run to a point and back cap without it feeling terrible. terrible. This also ties into a bunch of different weird bugs with the vehicles. Some vehicles on some maps, particularly the new Albazar rework, the tires of the vehicle get stuck under the road somehow. So you will have vehicles that mid-driving start to just slow down and then eventually come to a stop and can't move unless you reset them, which is so inconvenient when you just actually need to be somewhere, or it will get you killed because you're out in the open trying to reset a vehicle. Now these two bugs are the main ones I wanted to go through today, just because they're the most game breaking and they're the things that are ruining my experience of the update drastically. To be blunt, this update really needed to be a success for OWI. They hadn't updated the game 9 months prior to this update. Squad has had no content for 9 months, and if you look at the player count, you can tell it's lost thousands of active daily players during that time. When the UE5 update, when the V9 update came out on Steam, you can see that massive spike in players of people logging on to see what the new update was, and then it almost immediately dropped off to the pre-update numbers. People aren't interested in an update that just made the lighting different, that added a lackluster, unconventional faction, that really didn't do anything to improve gameplay, just change it a little bit and add some new bugs, which is just content at this point, I suppose. I didn't mention several other bugs that came with this patch that are still not fixed. There are graphic settings that you can choose that you can see through smokes with certain optics in game. There are still insanely bad audio issues, whether it be directional audio, whether it be the sound sounding like there is somebody walking behind you when you're hearing your own footsteps, or just certain layers being bugged where you just hear weird audio from you being inside a building while you're outside. I've seen more weird bugs on the Squad subreddit just these last 2 weeks than I have in a very, very long time. And that's saying something for how buggy a game like Squad is. There's clips of people getting stuck with the underwater filter over their gameplay when they're just walking on dry land. And the amount of complaints and gameplay I've seen by not being able to get the graphic settings right because of the weird new options that UE5 has implemented. If you have to look up a tutorial so that you can get the game to just look normal with the new update, then something's wrong here. Battlefield 6 comes out in 1 week at the making of this video. Now, a lot of the hardcore milsim people that play Squad won't be completely dropping Squad to play Battlefield. I'll still play Squad even though there's a Battlefield game out. But for a game like Squad, they rely on the randoms that show up every once in a while. And a lot of those randoms come from more casual arcadey FPSs like Battlefield. So if that new game is good, it will be detrimental to Squad's player base, which is something that OWI doesn't want to afford right now. So you would hope maybe if they had released the update in a good state, maybe if there was new content or just any good reason to make me want to come back and play Squad right now, there wouldn't be a massive dip in the players. But the numbers show for themselves, and they really desperately need a win here. Just anything good to come out in a polished and non-buggy manner. But I just do not have the faith that that'll happen anytime soon, and I want to be optimistic here. This game is still my favorite game ever and has the framework to be amazing. It just has gotten so bad recently, and I just don't see them improving it anytime in the near future. But I hope that they prove me wrong. I really do. Anyway, if you stayed this long till the end of the video, I appreciate you guys. Make sure to like and subscribe. We're still trying to reach 500 subs. I'd appreciate it. Thanks for all the support, and I will catch you guys in the next one. I got audio on them to the south though, but I can't see.
Oh. We won anyway.
Am I down 7 people?
Damn.